In previous presentations, we've looked at the principles of refrigeration, the operation of the air conditioning components, and the controls that operate the system. In this presentation, we'll look at automotive refrigerants and how to service the refrigerant portion of the air conditioning systems. Then we'll look at troubleshooting and diagnosing systems that are not performing properly. Let's get started. Refrigerant is the medium that transfers the heat from the interior of the car to the outside air following the principles of refrigeration. There are two common refrigerants used on today's vehicles. The properties of refrigerant R12 made it the refrigerant of choice for automotive systems for the first 50 years. R12 was very good at withstanding high pressures and temperatures without degrading or decomposing. It was considered ideal for automotive applications because it worked at relatively low operating pressures and was very stable. R12 systems used mineral oil carried in the refrigerant to lubricate the compressors. Refrigerant R12 is a fluorinated hydrocarbon that was found to be detrimental to the ozone layer of the Earth's atmosphere. Beginning in 1994, automobile manufacturers began phasing out the use of R12. By 1996, all vehicles sold in the United States were equipped with a new refrigerant called R134A. R134A has many of the same properties as R12, but is not detrimental to the ozone layer. R134A systems require the use of a different lubricant called a PAG oil. PAG oils vary by system manufacturers. Refrigerants R12 and R134A must never be mixed, as the refrigerants and their lubricants are not compatible. Because of the concern for the effect of R12 on the ozone layer, refrigerant recycling and recovery technology evolved. Refrigerant should never be vented directly to the atmosphere. To properly service an air conditioning system, shops today use refrigerant and recovery stations. Whether the system is R12 or R134A based, all systems today require the refrigerant to be recovered and recycled. Always wear safety goggles when working around refrigerant. The fittings for R12 and R134A are different and require separate recovery stations and gauges. Once a system has been opened to repair a leak or replace a component, the system must be evacuated. Connect the recycling station to the service ports and open the manifold and tank valves as specified in the recovery station's instructions. Evacuating the system will remove air and moisture, but not dirt. If the system is contaminated, it must be flushed prior to evacuation. A minimum of 25 minutes is required to pull the system down to a vacuum of 29 or 30 inches of mercury at sea level. Begin the evacuation by connecting the recovery machine hose to the air conditioning service port and open the inlet valve. Set the recovery machine to evacuate for 30 minutes or more. Once the machine is shut off, wait for 5 minutes to see if the pressure rises. If it does, the source of a leak must be isolated and repaired, and the procedure must be performed again. If the system continues to hold a vacuum after 5 minutes, close the inlet valve that was opened for the evacuation. Then check the oil recovery jar on the recycling machine. Determine the proper oil, whether one of several of the PAG oils for R134A systems or mineral oil for R12 systems, and add just a little more on refill to prevent air from being drawn into the system on recharge. Never mix PAG oils with mineral oil, as they are not compatible and damage to the system will result. Follow the recovery station's instructions to recharge the system. Open or close the high and low side pressure valves as directed. Then set the amount of refrigerant that is to be used in the charging process on the recovery machine. Open the valve from the refrigerant tank to start the flow of refrigerant to recharge the system. Start the engine and turn the air conditioning on. Allow the system to run for at least 5 minutes to stabilize. Close the refrigerant valve on the recovery station, then turn the engine off and turn off and disconnect the recovery station. The last step is to check the system for leaks using an approved leak detection procedure. Recovered refrigerant can be reclaimed, that is, purified by processing or manufacturing facilities. Storage containers for refrigerant to be reclaimed must be evacuated to a minimum 27 inches of mercury prior to filling. Containers must be labeled and must never be overfilled by weight.